Jonathan Rivers, you are the product planner for the 2023 Acura Integra. That is a very exciting job to have these days, isn't it?
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, Robin. Yeah, it's been an exciting job to have, and I've been lucky enough over the last 7+ years to be in Acura product planning. Working on a lot of our mid-cycle refreshes as well as our full redesigns of the TLX, the TLX Type S, and as you said, now with the new Acura Integra. So
it's kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Because when the Integra first came out in 1986, it was basically a slightly sportier, a slightly more luxurious Honda Civic. But over the 15 years that it was in the United States, the impression that it left on everybody, the last model was the Integra Type R. And that's what everyone remembered, the super high-end Integra. And then years go by and Civic SIs and all that, but then we get the Honda Civic Type R. So we get another Type R in 2017. So we've got these legacies of like mega performance Hondas. And now it seems like the Integra is kind of going back to its original roots and being a slightly sportier, slightly more luxurious Honda Civic. Am I off base, or how do you tackle that legacy that's been built up over time versus just the reality of what that car started as and what this car will start as?
yeah, it's a great question. I think it's all level setting, right? At the end of the day, think about how many Integras we sold. I think we actually did the exercise, and the tally was close to 1 million over the multi-generations. And I'm gonna let you take a stab at how many do you think out of that 1 million were Type Rs?
975,000.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what you would think, given the memories and the impressions and the reactions and things like that. But you're talking a couple thousand cars, right? So it's such a small sliver of what Integra actually was that I'm less worried about it being the leading message. I think, again, everybody that has that Integra story, it isn't the Type R story. People finally remember, and the journalists that were lucky enough to drive it. I remember most people have never even driven that car, right?
Yeah.
I think they're the ones that are very much, very fixated on it. But I think the general buying public had an Integra LS, they had an Integra GS, some lucky guys had a GSR. Those are the people that remember Integra and remember what it was. Like you said, it's always been based off of Civic. It's not a secret. It's not a story, right? It's what Integra's always been. And, what we've always really prided ourselves on was, making a really great Civic so we could have a really great Integra. And I think with this 11th generation Civic and the Civic SI, darlings of the media, the customers, the dealer body, it's a pretty good place to start, wouldn't you say?
Well, let's walk through what the Integra will be. There's going to be 4 grades: the Integra A-Spec, and then A-Spec with technology, and A-Spec with technology and a 6-speed manual transmission. The base price one will be $31,800, and then both Integra A-Spec with the technology package, you're talking at just a little bit under 37 grand, $36,845. Talk me through the pricing of that car, because just as we say, relating it to the Civic and the Civic SI, that is, Civic SI is right around 28.5 grand.
Yeah. So, especially from a product planning perspective, right? We look at it as straight MSRP. I mean, DNH is what it is. And, that's kind of across the industry. So we try to look at things as what's the actual MSRP of the car. And so to your point, the car starts at $30,800 from an MSRP viewpoint. That is awesome. That is exactly the messaging we've been putting out, starting around 30,000.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interject. Let me just, I included the destination charge in those prices. So yep. Yeah, that's a good point to make. That was base price plus destination, what I said.
Yep. No, I mean, at the end of the day, customers have to pay it, right? But
exactly.
When you look at it, but when you start to compare apples to apples, we try to leave that quotient out of it, right? Because at the end of the day, people just want to say, what's the MSRP? It's like adding in taxes and everything. I mean, you got to pay for it. But anyway, when we're looking at the Monroney and you're looking at what's there. So yeah, 30,800, right? We stuck to our message of around 30,000. There's not a lot out there for that price. SUV, sedan, you name it, to start at 30,000, especially for a premium brand, we're kind of the only ones, right? There's no other Asian brands that start at that pricing point, the Infinities, the Lexuses of the world. Clearly the Germans, even in this kind of entry compact segment, are starting several $1,000s more. And then to get the A-Spec package is just $2,000 on top of that. So you're at 32.8, very clean walk. Gives you great styling on the exterior and interior. And I think that might actually be one, probably the volume trim for Integra, because again, for 32.8, it's unbeatable. You can't get a car with, 18-inch wheels, a lot of the standard features like a 10.2-inch digital instrument cluster, right? You got CarPlay and Android Auto, you got the hatch, right? You got a good powertrain. All of that for 32.8 is still a deal. And then finally, for those that, want all of the feature set, you tack on 3,000 more and now you're at 35.8. And that's where the technology package comes in. The best part about it is those that, like myself, that are enthusiasts and would like the manual, it's a no cost option. So essentially it's just a choice for those customers that want that transmission. And now you're really putting things into perspective, because at 35.8, it's pretty much where like an A3, a CLA, a 228i Grand Coupe start at. And that's with nothing on it. And at our price, I mean, you've got head-up display, you've got wireless CarPlay, you've got 16 speaker 3D audio, which none of the competitors can match. You've got adjustable damping and suspension, the only, lift back in its class, the only 6-speed manual in its class. It really kind of puts this new Integra into, I don't want to use the word white space per se, but into this like just really perfect positioning where someone that is looking to buy their first premium compact car or premium compact CUV even could look at this car and go, it has everything I want.
Yeah. And so clearly the Integra has some more luxuries or technologies, if you prefer, than the Civic. And, you could argue about where it lies with its competition and packaging and those types of things. But since we're two enthusiasts talking, let's talk a little bit more about the core vehicle itself. It looks like this is basically stripped straight from the Civic Si parts bin. You've got the same 200 horsepower, 192 pound-feet of torque, turbocharged 1.5 liter, same torque peaks and everything, same RPMs for all that. You still have the helical limited slip diff in that car, and looks like tire size is even really similar. Is there anything from a powertrain point of view where the Integra stands out over the Civic Si?
Well, again, I'd like to frame it a little differently, right? Because, parts bin is a term that's thrown around loosely, as is platform sharing. And I think for the average person that might be listening in or want to hear this, the reality is that, first of all, that's just common practice, right? That there's nothing wrong with that. There's not even cases sometimes where that's better to do it that way, right? But the reason why we did it this way, right, is for affordability, right? We've got a great chassis, a great platform, a great, foundation to build off of. Let's not forget Civic was, car of the year. It does great as far as interior from Words Auto. So accolades galore. So it makes, like I said, history aside, since every Integra was always built off of a Civic, it just makes complete sense to start there, right? Mm-hmm. And what better place to start than currently the most sporty Civic you can buy, the Civic Si. So I think level setting it that way is a good place to start. To your point, yes, we're using, again, all of the same hardware, powertrain, chassis from the Civic Si. Now, the one thing that is the caveat is it's amazing what we can do with tuning, right? Whether that's software tuning, whether that's the engineers actually getting in and changing settings and things like that. And the tough thing is you really just have to drive it to really kind of feel that difference. So, I think once we have a chance to let the media and our customers get into the car, they're immediately going to notice this kind of different character, different sound, different feel. Because to your point, at some level, right, it doesn't make sense to just make another Civic Si. That doesn't make any sense, right? So clearly we're making an Integra, right? And so the Integra has its own unique, look and feel, right? So.
Okay. So hardware is in fact the same, but there's tuning involved to make it distinct. And you talked about loosely used, commonly used terms, and I'm just going to go ahead and use another one. It does look like it shares a platform. I would guess that you guys started with the Civic hatchback platform as opposed to the Civic sedan platform, because this is a liftback itself. Can you speak to, is this basically, this is the Civic hatchback platform that we're looking at?
So yeah, it's funny. And I think that would be the easy assumption, but the reality is this though, and I think this is for, this is what doesn't come across in pictures and videos and things like that, is the length of the vehicle. So the length of this vehicle is actually, just maybe an inch or so longer than a Civic sedan.
Yeah.
Right. So fundamentally, just from a length and a proportions, it doesn't make sense to start from the 5-door platform. So we actually started with the 4-door platform. Right?
So it is Civic sedan.
Okay. I mean, the car is a sedan, right? And now it's a swoopy sedan. It has the sloping roof line in back. And just to your point, it has the lift gate in back. So, what our engineers did was some really, ingenuity there by utilizing some of the parts, especially around the rear fenders, to, provide extra body rigidity, to deal with the extra weight that comes with having a lift gate. Sure, some of those components, from the 5-door platform were utilized, but fundamentally it's from the 4-door, because again, this car is a sedan, right? It's a long vehicle. It's several inches longer than the hatchback, right? So the Civic 5-door really kind of drops off towards the rear with almost no overhang. If you see this car in person, you'll kind of see that length.
Okay, got it. And you mentioned adding rigidity to the structure. Is it adding rigidity to deal with the extra weight of the liftgate and those things, or is this structurally more rigid than the Civic sedan?
Well, so it's kind of both. So the answer is because the extra weight, as I mentioned, from the liftgate, you do have differences in the fundamental platform, like I said, specifically around the rear wheel arch area. That's exclusive. But that's just the platform we're talking about, if you want to call it the skateboard, right? I know they use that term a lot. But above that, right, the white body, right, the structure itself is quite exclusive from any of the Civics, because
clearly a different body. Yeah.
A clearly different body. There's very few areas for that white body structure that are common. It's almost completely exclusive, which kind of takes you to the entire exterior of the vehicle, because there is no sheet metal shared with any of the Civic platform or bodies. So the Integra, because again, we use the areas we needed to make the car affordable, to make it, to start from a great foundation, and then areas that we felt needed to be upgraded, changed, made exclusive are the areas we really focused on.
Great. So from a dynamic point of view, obviously we're dealing with more similarities again, but this is where even the hardware does get distinctive, because you have the optional adaptive dampers. So I'm really curious what you can speak to about the tuning philosophy of the Integra versus the tuning philosophy of the SI.
Well, they weren't developed together, and so therefore they weren't tuned together, right? So the Integra is clearly an Acura, right? So it was tuned more in line with the rest of the Acura lineup. right? It was tuned in line with the available adjustable suspension that we have on the RDX, the TLX. Those models, right, set the stage for how do we want to tune it, right? And because we share the same integrated dynamic system as the rest of the other Acuras, so you have a comfort mode, which is great. Especially I'm here in Los Angeles. We all know how the freeways are out here. It's really nice to be able to put it in comfort mode and have a much more compliant ride. The normal mode is great for just daily driving. And of course, there's a sport mode, which kind of firms things up, makes it a little bit better for that occasional canyon blast during the weekend. But I think what's even beyond that is the available individual mode. So that's really awesome because it has several parameters that allow the customer to really customize, how they want their drive to be. So with a simple push of a button, let's say you like the heavier steering, but you do want the softer suspension, but yet maybe you want the more aggressive engine response. You can literally, kind of piecemeal each of those areas together, which is something that is really unique. And again, having that adjustable suspension as one of the choices.
Right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for giving us some insight on the brand new 2023 Integra. It has been decades since we've had that nameplate with us, and I'm definitely excited to have it back and to one day get the chance to drive one to see how it feels and what emotions it brings when you drive it. Thank you so much for your time and giving us some insights on this 2023 Acura Integra.
Thanks, Robin. Take care.